Welcome back to the Benjy and Kyle podcast. This podcast episode marks a very special episode for all of us, and that's because we are now an official podcast. We have real equipment, thanks to our donors on Patreon, our massive fan base, and our very wealthy investors. We have a microphone, we have two microphones, we have a mixer, and hopefully that means that the audio is coming in much clearer and much crisper for all of our listeners. So we're very excited about that.
Yes, indeed. We hope that it makes for a smoother listening experience. We're sitting here, we have the headphones on, we have the real microphones, real condenser microphones in front of us.
It's pretty rad.
It's real, it's a real thing.
I feel like I'm on Joe Rogan.
Lex Friedman.
Lex Friedman, he's a good one.
I feel like I'm on the Benjy and Kyle podcast. Or is it the Kyle and Benjy podcast?
Time will tell.
Time will tell.
Yes.
So today we're talking about morality, whether it's subjective or objective, whether moral relativism versus objective morality. And the place, like we always do, we want to start at what is the definition of those two. So maybe you want to start us off with that.
Sure. So the way I was thinking it'd be better to start would be starting with the definitions of objective and subjective. Because honestly, I feel like people often get these confused. For example, I remember hearing a conversation a while back about whether there are more doors or more wheels in the world. And I was talking about this with somebody, and the person was saying that because no one really knows the answer is subjective. It just depends on kind of like what people think about it, what people feel about it. And I was quite certain this was a misapplication of the word subjective, although it depends on how he was using the word. It depends how you think of it. Because the answer to whether there are more doors or more wheels. Did I say something else before?
No, I'm saying I think the answer is wheels.
Oh,
as opposed to
you
doors.
Actually think that?
Well, how many doors does each person have on average, and how many wheels does each person have? I guess not everyone has a car. If they do, that's 4 wheels. If they have a bike,
but how many doors is it? A car.
If they have rollerblades, the car's doors. The bike doesn't. Okay, so cars cancel themselves out.
Okay, yeah. The bike has more wheels, but there are things with doors that don't have wheels, like dressers, cupboards, cabinets.
Okay. Drawers aren't considered doors.
Well, I've heard that debated in this conversation. Sure, we can say they're not doors. That's fine.
There are things that have doors but not wheels, and things that have wheels but not doors.
Certainly.
Okay, what is there an answer?
No one knows the answer. I don't think you can find it online. No one has bothered to measure this and find a real answer. But that's why it's a good topic for this subject.
Because there is one true answer.
Exactly. It's a topic that I've heard people mistakenly classify as a subjective topic. But actually, it is still objective, even though no one knows the answer. There are objectively more doors or more wheels in the world. It's not something that's based on people's feelings or people's opinions or people's experiences or anything like that. It is an objective question. Now, if you want to say that the answers that you will hear from people are subjective, you can say that because the answers that you hear from people will be based on their own, however they're thinking about the question or whatever. But the lack of the ability to go on Google and find the answer doesn't make the thing not objective. Is that a fair thing to start with? Are we in agreement so far?
Maybe. I would say the exact number does not maybe doesn't exist, because at any given moment this number is in fluctuation. But you're just saying more doors or more wheels. So the exact number doesn't really matter. But a lot of what defines a door or a wheel more doors, but doors are more subjective, I think, than wheels.
Okay.
A wheel has a ball bearing, circular nature. Like a door, I don't know. Some things you might think are doors.
Okay, so I thought we were going to get to here also. True, yes. There isn't a kind of standard universal definition of what a door is, or what a wheel is, I'm sure.
I wasn't thinking of closet doors when you said doors. I was just thinking people doors.
Like doors big enough for people to walk through. Doors of buildings. I hear. Yeah, it's a
people are the most important thing.
Nice. Which we'll get to on our subject when we talk about morality.
Exactly.
So here's the thing though. It's true that it depends on the definition. So you could say that the answer is subject to how we're defining the question. But as soon as you have a definition, whatever definition you have of what a door is or what a wheel is, the answer doesn't depend on people's feelings or opinions about it. Meaning, even the definition that you agree upon or that you arrive at is an objective definition in the sense that it's a definition grounded in the objective world. You're trying to find some definition using objective metrics, like, well, a door has to have these properties, a door has to have hinges, and it has to be able to open and close, and maybe part of the definition is that a person has to be able to walk through it. You can't do this with things that are truly subjective. A good example of something that is truly subjective, which I think is easy to agree that is subjective, is the taste of ice cream, as a specific example. Taste of anything. Is chocolate ice cream better than vanilla ice cream? So here, the only way to discuss the topic is to talk about the subjects, not the objects. Meaning, you can't objectively point to any properties of chocolate ice cream and vanilla ice cream and say that one is better than the other. You can only talk about the experience of the person who is tasting the ice cream at the time. So that's why it's subjective in the sense that it entirely depends on the subject of the question.
So I would say that I agree mostly.
Okay.
I think that it's more about, to the best of our abilities, we could define things. And that defining things 100% might be impossible, because there is always going to be that small margin of error of subjectivity. So like, even saying, a definition, a person has to be able to walk through that. Well, what is a person? How tall a person? It has to have hinges. Like, most 99.9% of the time, and people would agree on some sort of definition, but it's still impossible to make like a closed, tight case of anything in the physical world, at least.
You're saying it's impossible to come up with any definition, that no one could possibly come up with an example that we would say, I'm not sure if that falls in the definition?
Yeah, for doors and wheel, like a chair. I don't know. I think you could try all you want to define a chair. You'll still be able to come up with some irrelevant, obscure example, but counterexample. But for all intents and purposes, you could come up with a solid, robust definition, but not airtight.
Okay. So, yeah. So
how would you tie this into morality exactly? Your case...
I don't know if I'm ready to jump to morality, but I don't know if I'm ready to jump to morality, because I want to kind of pinpoint what I mean by objectivity, because I do think that we're going to have a gap here. So even though it might be impossible to have a standard definition of what a door is, although let's say I grant that. I'm not entirely convinced of that, as well as a chair. Nevertheless, whatever we define is going to be a definition that rests in the objective world. Well, you could try to define it subjectively, but you wouldn't. That's why we have this intuition that a chair is an objective thing, and so we would try to define it with some objective world. But the fact that it becomes ambiguous at the edges doesn't make it subjective, in the sense that it is still in the objective world. It is not subject to. Now I'm using people's opinions and feelings as my constant kind of like reference point for what things are subject to. Now I do grant that things can be subject to other things, and then you can kind of like talk about, well, even you can get kind of philosophical with the objective world and say, well, even that is subject to the laws of physics and the laws of reality. And I want to get to that eventually also. But kind of staying a little bit more on planet Earth for a second, even if the definition has some fuzzy boundaries, that's just a testament to our inability to capture the preciseness of the definition. It's not a testament to the lack of objectivities when it comes to what chairs are, when it comes to chairs. Is that fair? Do you get what I'm saying?
Like, you're saying it should be theoretically possible. It's just we haven't gotten there yet to a pure definition of a chair.
Yeah, or just no one has tried hard enough.
No one has tried hard.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like we are, as a species, capable of coming up with the definition if we were to try hard enough.
So I disagree, but again, I think for practical purposes, we can agree on an objective in quotations with the smallest asterisks, a definition of a chair. And I think that it's an inherent issue, because whatever definition you use, it's going to be using properties that are just, at the end of the day, fundamentally subjective, because they're in the physical world. And let's say math, okay? Math is a system where you have a bunch of fundamental axioms that, one number follows the other, and then everything's derived from that. Like when you take two numbers together, you're always going to get something larger than the previous numbers. Or it could even be like simpler than that. And they've tried creating a simple set of axioms from which everything can be derived logically and deduced from those facts.
Mm-hmm.
And then for sure that everything that you've deduced is true, because the axioms are considered to be true. But there were a few famous crises in mathematics that still are not completely solved, where they have the problems of, like, if one of the axioms is, sets contain certain elements, and but what about the set that contains itself? What about these contradictions that they found with the axioms that most of the time have no bearing on math itself?
Russell's paradox?
Maybe. I think so. Bertrand Russell had an issue with, I think he posed it, or he went crazy trying to solve it and couldn't. And then it turned out that there was no solution. Like, this is a problem in math that, computers still work, planes still fly. Math works, but it's actually based fundamentally on certain axioms that, in the most obscure case, are problematic. And things have actually, like, it has certain repercussions, but just, again, very remote cases. So,
well, it's possible to get around Russell's paradox by just saying that a set can never contain itself. And it makes a lot of sense that
there are issues. I don't think, like, it's still an unsolved thing. Even if you say, like, sets can't contain themselves, then either that, like, gets rid of a lot of mathematical results that we have, or I'm pretty sure that the crisis is still there. We just live with it. But our listeners can double check.
We'll leave that. Yeah, we'll leave that to the fact checkers.
Mm-hmm. To the discretion of our listeners.
Yes.
Okay. But okay. So maybe if you were to give me a definition once again of whatever a chair is, whatever colors, I could come up always with, like, a new color that no one's ever seen, or a weird looking chair that, like, as long as you have to be able to sit on it. But what does that mean, sit on it? What does that mean, able to? You, person.
A chair is I'm about to embarrass myself, because I'm not sure if the word I'm about to use means what I think it means. Inorganic means it's, like, not alive.
No, that's inanimate. Inorganic means it's not made out of something that was once alive. Okay,
so a chair is an inanimate object.
Why can't it be animate?
It can't be.
Okay.
A chair is an inanimate object.
Have you seen chairs in the Disney movies that dance and sing? They're animated. Still a chair.
The reason why that's a chair is because it takes a chair, which is inanimate, and puts life into it.
I wasn't... Okay. That was just an illustration of being able to... Okay. You could explain everything away, maybe.
But that's what I'm saying.
But I don't think you can.
I think if you gave me 100 pages, I could easily fit a definition for a chair inside 100 pages.
And you won't have any contradictions?
I don't think so. I think I could do it, if I tried hard enough.
So if it was a chair before and then they animated it, it's not a chair. No, it is a chair, but it's a special case.
Well, no, it could still be a chair because, I mean, it's fictional anyway, of course, but you can have fictional chairs, I grant. But it would be...
Can a person dress up as a chair?
Well, for the sake of... Yes, certainly.
And then serve as a chair?
Well, here's the thing. You're getting into a question about whether a fictional representation is equivalent to the thing. And I could, for the sake of my...
Okay, I moved away from that. Well, you explained it away. But let's say I dress up on Halloween or Purim.
No, I'm still on that. That's still part of that. because for the sake of my definition, I could reject all those cases. I could say, no, you're representing a chair. You are symbolizing a chair, but that's not a chair. No, if you're dressing up as a chair, you're not a chair. And even the moving, singing chair in a Disney movie, also not a chair. Yeah, for the sake of my definition, I could reject both of those.
Okay, so you reject those, but then I think you'll eventually say, oh, wait, that is a chair. And then I'll say, you'll give another example of something that is a chair, and then that'll contradict your idea of things that aren't chairs.
Well, it's possible. It's an inanimate object with a back.
Oh, it has to have a back now. Stools aren't chairs.
Stools are not chairs. There has to be a back.
There has to be a back.
There has to be a seat.
Okay, see, I don't think you're going to get anyone on board with this definition.
I think so.
Nothing is a chair at this point.
Nothing is a chair. What do you mean? There are tons of chairs. I've literally just described the typical chair: back and seat, and there has to be legs as well.
Oh, legs.
There
have to be legs. Have you never seen a chair with like the C-shaped?
There has
just a block.
There has to be some elevation.
Oh, elevation.
Meaning, if it's just the seat on the ground and a back, that doesn't work.
Really?
Because there's not enough. It has to be elevated so that the back can.
I've seen chairs like that people like sit on at the beach, parks.
And there's literally no elevation off the ground. It's just a seat on the
barely.
ground and then a back.
Yeah.
I don't know if that's a chair.
Yeah. So as to not get stuck in this and bogged down onto defining chairs, let's maybe move on to morality. But
okay.
I think it's clear what the fundamental disagreement or that we have about being able to define things that exist, especially in the physical world, for me at least. But I understand where you stand. Okay. So let's talk about morality.
Mm-hmm.
What is morality?
So morality is I could call it the set of rules pertaining to human behavior.
Okay, a set of rules. So is fine table manners? Is that morality? Etiquette.
There could be an element of morality in fine table manners. On its own, it's not. On its own, it's not morality. On its own, it's merely social etiquette, which is not the same as morality. But it depends on the whole. It depends on the situation taken holistically. For example, if you know that having proper table manners means a lot to your mom, and your mom happens to be at the table, and using proper table manners in this scenario is kind of a way of respecting your mother and not offending her, and just doing something that will show some gratitude and some respect to your mom who cooked this meal, then it
so it could be anything. Like etiquette itself is not.
Etiquette is not the same as morality.
So so I was just saying that because that's a set of rules that governs people. But I think we find it down to be more a set of social rules that govern people.
How did you make it better? I thought a problem was that social etiquette is not morality, yet it falls into my definition.
Right. Okay. Not social. There's an aspect of respecting one another. There's an aspect of behaving in a way that benefits. It's treating others in a certain way. So it's not just using your knife in a certain way. It's how your behavior affects others. So that's what I meant by. Well, I guess etiquette also affects others.
But I already have a bit of an issue with that morality is confined to how you treat others. Now, I could just say also yourself, and then you could just say, okay, fine, how you treat yourself as well, because how you treat people, and you are one of people.
Mm-hmm.
All right, fine. Let's leave it at that for now. I might go back to that.
Okay.
Because there is actually Jonathan Haidt. Sorry, it's all related. Jonathan Haidt has a good example of something that makes people rack their brains as to whether it's a moral question, even though it has no effect on other people. Although one could say it has an effect on yourself. Is it okay to have sex with a dead chicken?
Okay, we went there. Or a robot dog.
Okay, or a robot dog. Sounds good. It's a victimless crime, right?
Mm-hmm.
The chicken's already dead. Yeah, even if you say that the chicken could be a victim, the chicken's already dead. The dog is a robot, although some people think that robots can be victims. Is that okay? It's a complicated question. I would venture to say no, or at least something inside me wants to say no. And that's actually, Jonathan Haidt explained that a lot of people respond that way. A lot of people are like, I want to say no, but I don't know why. But anyway, I just brought that up as a kind of good brain teaser.
Okay, so what I would say my definition is, it's basically for the foundation is not doing unto others something that you wouldn't want done to yourself, and that is something that's a very old rule. In the Bible, it says, treat your fellow as you would want to be treated. That's more of a positive commandment of doing something that has all sorts of issues, because like, I'd want to be given $1 million. Does that mean I should give someone else $1 million? So the negative version of just don't harm others, don't do things to other people that you wouldn't want done to yourself. I think there's still complications with it, but like I said, it's the best we could do. And there's also so it's kind of this foundation of empathy that, like, wow, I wouldn't want that done to me, so I shouldn't have it done to do it to others. And it's the dead chicken question is interesting, because according to that definition, from an empathetic point of view, it would disgust me. Like, I wouldn't want to see that. I wouldn't want to know about it. But if no one's actively being harmed, then yeah, I would say at that point you're just interacting with a bunch of molecules, because there's no, as we humans would empathize with some type of animatism, spirit, or whatever. It doesn't, I don't want to just say people, because animals are also included. And it's the spectrum that we should also treat trees well, maybe, but obviously I have no problem burning logs for my own benefit. So, like, it's this hierarchy. You treat those closest to you in a different way, with the highest regard, because you have the highest empathy for them. It's also based on the survival of society, so that's why we have morality, I think, and that's probably a point you might want to push back on. But it's founded, in my opinion, and it makes sense that it's just like rules that we've come up with so that society can survive, so that we could survive together, live together without killing each other. That's why we have it. Etiquette is not, like table etiquette, it's not vital to society's functioning. And yeah, you could argue, if you, like, I don't know, kill a homeless man, society won't collapse. So it's more this system that, like, we have to enforce in general so that society continues. Not just a homeless person. I get you could kill anyone. I don't know. I'm just and society will continue. But in a case where no one gets hurt, or you won't get caught, that's the homeless example. You might not get caught, or there's not as much empathy as if it's. There are other cases that where society cares a lot more. So it's not just empathy on a personal level. It's also about survival of the society, and it's something that needs to be enforced. So it's a long, windy definition that I gave, whereas you were able to say it just as like a system of rules that humans follow.
Yeah, but we established that my definition wasn't sufficient.
Right.
You're finished with your definition?
Yeah.
So I don't have the same kind of challenge that you had, which was a very good one, because social etiquette fell into my definition. But when it comes to your definition, it seems to start from this starting point that views us human beings as, like, in a vacuum, we wouldn't be beholden to morality. That is to say that we can do whatever we want. There's no real rules. But we kind of see the practical ramifications of, quote, doing whatever you want or doing certain things. And so we kind of make this calculated decision that to survive as a species, we should have some rules in order that the society, thrives and grows and doesn't collapse. And I I also think this way sometimes because it's a convenient way of thinking for the sake of reasoning about certain things. But I think fundamentally that isn't really the reality. That isn't really the truth. I think fundamentally morality is something that we are beholden to even against our will. Like even if we didn't opt into it. Meaning is to say like we're part of a world that has its own set of rules, and that's the rules are not things that the rules are not. I should say the rules are not exclusively things that we made. I should probably be willing to accept that there is certainly a um, a social aspect to morality, certainly, because morality part of morality does become like what people expect and what allows society to function. But I think there are kind of like more natural fundamental rules at play. For example, even if I lived like in the movie I Am Legend, where I was just the society, there was no society around me because I'm the only person, there would still be moral questions. Do you think there would be any moral questions if you were the only person in the world?
Um, I think by definition, as long as we're excluding, like how you should treat yourself, um, I think that no, that morality is just something that only exists with others. Like what respecting the dead. Maybe if in your I'm Legend case and like burying it, I think that's something that we invented because you can't evolutionarily, if you leave dead people lying around, you'll get sick and die. Um, I think there's an empathetic factor that, I wouldn't want people to just see me rot away. I think yeah. But technically, it's a victimless crime in the I'm Legend case. There's no one who's actually suffering except for Will Smith.
You clearly know the movie better than I do. I was just talking about as an example of one person living without other people around. I don't even.
Yeah, there are other people that survive.
Oh right, he meets up with survivors at the end.
Yeah,
But for most of the movie, he's without anybody else.
just zombies. But like those zombies, should he? Okay, not zombies, but if he sees a corpse, should he bury it? Not just for the sake of survival. I don't know what. You give me an example of what would be a moral question if you're the last person on Earth.
So I think even if you're the last person on Earth, there are decisions you could make that would lead to more corruption in your soul and would lead to you living a more disconnected and chaotic existence. And there are decisions you can make that would lead you to living a life of better inner peace and contentment. And you could say, well, that's a matter of preference. You might prefer to live in contentment versus live in chaos. But I would say those things are indicative of an objective morality outside of you that even surrounds an individual as an individual, even without a relationship to other people.
But can you give an example?
Okay, you weren't satisfied by that abstract explanation.
Sorry.
So even if you were the last person on Earth, if you were to just drink and eat and be gluttonous to a excessive amount and just stuff your face, and versus eating healthy, eating just a normal amount to sustain yourself. Now you could say, well, what's the big deal? So you stuffed your face, that's your problem. But yeah, it is your problem. Like no, it's true that nobody else was affected because nobody else exists. But I still view that as an immoral action.
Mm-hmm. So yeah, even in my definition, stuffing your face, even if you're not the last person on Earth, isn't immoral because as long as it doesn't affect anyone else. If you don't have anyone that is relying on you, for example.
But you always do that. That's a thing. If you don't have anybody who's relying on you, let's say that that's true. There's really no one who relies on you. Well, that itself is that you're just taking that as a given. Why does that have to be the case? Go be someone. I'm being a little Jordan Peterson-esque right now, but go be someone that somebody can rely on, because there's certainly somebody out there who would like to rely on you if you could be somebody who they could rely on, and that they deserve to rely on you, not that they're like just being a dead weight in your life.
Right, but I don't think that it's a person's responsibility to go. I think it's just a person's responsibility to not harm someone, not go out of their way to have to benefit or help other people,
So,
because that's a never ending quest. Why aren't you right now going out adopting all the children in orphanages?
yeah, no, you're right. Of course, there's yes. I accept that there's first of all there's always a distinction between kind of negative commandments and positive commandments. So things that you should not do versus things that you should do. And yes, you can't take it to an extreme because people have to live within their abilities and so I don't know where the line is. I don't know what each person is what the optimal amount of positive good doing somebody should be doing. But I think I can say that somebody who refuses to do good things and only adopts a morality of, well, I just don't do bad things. I'm not saying that is the equivalent of somebody who does bad things, but I think it is pretty clear that there is something mediocre about that it could be better. And
Yeah, could always be better. But so I'm not.
But just by accepting that it could be better, I think accepts that there's a moral hierarchy here. If we accept that the person who does not do bad things and does good things is better than the person who only does not do bad things, then we're accepting that there's a morality of doing good and not just not doing bad. Even if we were to say that the person who is not doing bad and not doing good, he's not doing anything wrong, but we are accepting a moral value in doing good that is, if not incumbent, at the very least, better.
I would say that if you go out of your way to help people, you're doing a moral thing. You are more moral in a sense than someone who doesn't. Mm-hmm. But I don't think that person who doesn't is immoral. So I hear what you're saying about there being there's like something to working to like put yourself out there to help people. But I still think in the case of, leading a healthy lifestyle, if it is in the moral hierarchy, then it's like bottom of the bottom because it's not expected. But that's why I even would be prepared to put it in its own category of something else.
There's certainly a lot of things pertaining to leading a healthy lifestyle that we would put in a kind of neutral category. It's not really a moral question. But so there's a large domain of living relatively healthy that let's say for the sake of this morality-based discussion, we'll say that's pretty much equivalent. But all I needed in order to show that there can exist morality even when there don't exist any other people in the world is to just give an extreme example of totally gluttony, stuffing your face till you burst practically, and say that even if there are no other people in the world, that is still an immoral action. You have one, possibly killed yourself by overeating, or maybe you just got sick, and two, it's not just the damage you did to yourself; it's the lack of self-respect. I'm trying to quantify it,
but you're still tying it back to it affecting someone. It's just that person is you.
Well, I don't know if I can get away from that.
Okay, so then, yeah, if there's no one, then there's no morality. If it's just you, at least according to me, if it's just you, then you can only be immoral towards yourself.
Can God be the victim? Well, then we're assuming God, I guess.
And that God can even be a victim.
Well, in order for someone to be a victim, do they have to feel the pain of is the insult is quantifying something as an insult a classification on the action or a classification on how it affects the victim?
I'd say on the action. I don't know exactly. It's not just insult. I was thinking of if you steal from someone and they just don't notice because they're so wealthy or whatever, or they're busy. That's still immoral because you wouldn't want it done to yourself. Even though they're not conscious of it. Okay. They don't feel the pain.
Okay.
So maybe just to wrap up the definition, why do you think people are moral then?
Is this wrapping up the definition, or is this a new question?
Rounding it out. It's I don't know. It's keeping the definition moving.
Okay. Why do I think people are moral?
Yeah.
Well, I'm not sure I necessarily think that people are moral. naturally, inherently. I think we certainly have the capacity for morality. We also have a great capacity for immorality, and I think we live in that battle.
Okay,
So,
but why do you think that people, even if they're not naturally behaving morally, why do you think they do? Or do you think that people just don't behave morally?
well, I think people on the whole behave morally. Well, I don't know about that.
Okay.
People also on the whole behave immorally.
Right.
People on the whole behave both. They're complex.
Okay.
You could ask the question, why do people do anything moral? Is that what you're asking? Because why?
Well, I'm saying, where does morality come from? If you think that it's not inherent in humans, which I agree with you. I don't think I'm not saying that humans are inherently moral just because it's something that arises out of humanity trying to function together. I think that if you put, like in Lord of the Flies, a bunch of kids on an island, they might start killing each other. And because often, if you could get away with it, then you could do it. And I think that was more of a thing in the past. I'm talking about thousands of years ago. I think if those people living back then, they were raiding, they were pillaging, raping, slaughtering, just animals, people, that wouldn't fly in today's moral societies.
Just a word on that, by the way. I don't think it flew as much as we sometimes think in back then either. It sort of flew in the kind of immediate aftermath of victory on the battlefield, when people are like super charged and there's like this this militant tribal feeling, and this feeling of domination and conquering, and also like you just saw a bunch of them kill your friends and brothers, and so like it's time to just lay waste to. But when you fast forward like 3 days forward and people would calm down, it wasn't okay to just continue raping and pillaging after the battle was more than 3 days old.
I mean, I hear what you're saying about like a fever pitch.
Okay, that was good.
But like the Vikings made it.
Oh well,
like
unless we're talking about people that were actually immoral. I thought you meant like all of society, everywhere. But yeah, there were.
I think my point was that I was getting to was that there's a trend that society is more moral nowadays. You can't get away with that stuff, and maybe according to you, it all came about because of a revelation of God or something.
Ooh, I don't know.
Okay, that's surprising to me. We'll get more into that.
Okay.
To me, I was going to say enforcement is a lot stronger nowadays. You can't even like back then. I can imagine if you're living in a tribe or something, and you want to secretly steal your neighbor's wife, and so you just like murder him with a stone.
Who's going to stop you?
Who's going to stop you? No one's going to know about it. You do it when no one's looking. There's no forensics department, and you could get away with it, unless, of course, he's bigger than you and he has friends who are upset and suspect you. But like, if you could get away with it, which was much easier back then maybe you would do it. And I'm sure a lot of people tried. And I was watching this series called Chimp Dynasty or something, Chimp Empire.
Okay.
And and they show like how even these chimpanzees behaving with it, behave in a societal manner where they enforce like certain things. Like you can't just get away with stuff. They all build up, their own teams or people's teammates to enforce their rule, and they have to enforce their rule on the people. And I think, maybe people back then, you had to cut off someone's hand for stealing or something. That was a punishment in the past, but now it's not. Now we've grown as a society. We know we're educated. We have a better sense of why we should be moral, not just because someone said so and because someone's going to cut our hands off, but because it will reward us as a society. We'll become more functional, more prosperous if people aren't constantly trying to steal from each other. But, it still exists. People still do. If you could get away with, stealing, not stealing, like ambiguous, money schemes that may be according to the letter of the law, hiding your money offshore, and you could get away with it, then I'm sure a lot of people would do that. So why are people moral? I think a lot of it has to do with enforcement and education, survival of society. But you said it's not because of revelation from God. Because a lot of people would point to, the Bible, or before that, the Hammurabi Code or something.
Well, so it's getting more and more difficult in my life to try to like get to kind of like what I honestly believe, to the extent that I can know that, versus like what the more official religious answer would be. But yes, the religious answer would be that morality required revelation in order to take root among human beings. In order that we have any real understanding of what morality is, there had to be a kind of initial revelation. But the reason why I took issue with you bringing that up earlier was because I thought you were saying that we have become more moral due to divine revelation. But I would say that the divine revelation occurred a long time ago.
I was just speaking like 10,000 years versus
like
2,000 years. But you're saying we've gotten worse since divine revelation? I know that's
no, I don't think that. No.
Okay.
I don't think we've gotten, well, actually, maybe in some ways. It's complicated. On some level, perhaps we have gotten better.
I know that it's a classical Jewish religious idea that the generation's descent were always worse than the last one. But yeah, maybe that's, even for you, that's probably a complicated thing, because you look at nowadays and you're like, how could we have been, like, war's gone down. I don't know. Killing worldwide, stealing has all gone down.
Yeah. Paradoxically, I think it is possible for our environment and our surroundings to have gotten more moral, in the sense that it's more peaceful, and war, as you say, war has gone down, and
collaboration.
And the social safety nets that societies provide people now,
and you can't get away with anything.
And all the opportunities for volunteering and charity work that is that's out there. I think it's possible for the kind of surroundings that we grow up in to become more moral, while we as individuals, in a sense, become not necessarily more immoral, but kind of less morally valorous, less morally strong. It's very tough to find someone nowadays who is really capable of standing up to the grain. And maybe in those days as well, it was, I'm sure, of course, it's always been hard to find. Is it harder to find now? I guess I don't really know. But it could happen paradoxically that the society becomes better, but the individuals, not that they become truly worse in the sense that like we are behaving badly to each other and killing and stealing, but just that we are just so complacent, so lackadaisical, so we don't have to better ourselves because we have all this infrastructure in place to make society function.
Mm-hmm.
It's no longer about the individual at all.
Right. But you might be talking about on a span of 100 years, you're not just talking about 1,000 years ago.
Okay.
But I don't know, maybe there's also this romantic notion of like looking into the past. Oh, everyone was more valorous. They cared a lot more about honor. But I think it goes through fluctuations, I think probably, maybe it's my romantic notion of, earlier decades, but yeah, I think nowadays we're probably on a downward spin. I don't know. And if we all wind up killing each other, and could, it might not necessarily, be an uphill ascent the whole way to a better world. I think we might go down.
I think that's possible too.
Mm-hmm. So the thing about morality from God, okay, so the way that it's, in the Bible.
Wait, can I, there was one thing I wanted to say
sure.
about the previous lane. When you said that, you were talking about why people are moral, and you said people are moral because we've kind of come to this collective realization that society requires it. Something like that?
Yeah, not necessarily a conscious realization,
Mhm.
but and not completely linear, but yeah, it's or not even a realization. It could be uh, a natural thing that emerges from beings trying to work together.
Okay. So I could do one thing, which is why does society require it? Why is it necessary, you know, that society have morality?
Or why do people do it? Why are you moral? Why is Bob from accounting moral?
Yeah. So I would phrase it more as there's we live we don't just live in a vacuum. It's easy to kind of go into our heads and think like, I just live in this world, but I can make of it what I want to. But I don't really believe that. I think we live in a very structured reality. And there's a sort of way of things around us. That's just the way things work. And even if we were to try to get away from it, we would run up against issues and problems, and we would corrupt ourselves. And um, so I think it's a little more fundamental, and I think a little more accurate. But I think the two very much go together because one, I think, causes the other, maybe, which is that we are moral because we've kind of been conditioned by reality, which has a kind of moral structure that it imposes on us.
Reality,
That's right.
the reality of survival or the world,
Survival,
society.
certainly, but also a kind of it's not just survival; it's also the survival of our souls, our psyches. In order that our psyche is at peace with itself, there's just a finite number of ways that we must behave in order for that to happen.
So I would say the reason that we're conditioned or evolved to want to calm our psyche is survival instinct.
It
So
all comes from survival.
yeah, it's
Um,
just something we've always been doing, just like drinking water. It's just something that humans have just been doing since forever.
mhm.
Just something passed on. I don't think animals, they obviously have either no morality or a completely different set of morality. To the tiger or the lion, eating other animals is his morality. That's good to him. And you can imagine societies maybe where uh, that sort of behavior exists and it's
But
beneficial
we
for
eat other
survival.
animals.
Right. And it's probably an immoral thing to do. I wouldn't want to be eaten. And we kind of brush it off. It's one of, fundamental issue. You could say, oh, it's necessary for our survival. So therefore it is justified, in the hierarchy of what you're allowed to do. The life of a human takes precedence over that of an animal. So therefore you could eat an animal. But increasingly with the development of science, and fake meat and vitamins, essential vitamins from other sources, plant-based sources, that's becoming harder and harder to justify.
Mm.
And I basically just don't think about it. And I think most people don't think about it,
Mm-hmm.
but they realize it's wrong. They wouldn't want to kill an animal
Mm-hmm.
if you made them kill the animal before they ate it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
They would think differently about it.
Yeah. And so, in terms of subjectivity of morality, I think it kind of approaches that because I can imagine a society like you say, oh, it's objective. There's this thing, it exists, whether or not people exist. I think it depends on the society, and I can maybe imagine a society that's unrecognizable by what you think is more moral or something, but it's necessary for that society's survival. Like if you have a cannibalistic culture, like spiders that they eat the they eat each other, for the good of the society, then
How is that good for the society?
it provides nutrient. I don't know. There are animals, insects that eat each other after copulation, like spiders that consume the female spider consumes the male spider after copulation
What makes you
because it
think it's good
provides
for
vitamins.
what makes you think it's good for the spiders as a whole? And even though it provides a benefit to the eater, that doesn't make it like it, there's a lot of bad things one could do that would provide a benefit to you. Um, yeah, I guess I should just ask what makes you think it's good for the spiders as a whole?
Well, that's an easier question to answer because if you can, if each spider, if the female spider gets to have more nutrients after, then it'll have better success, genetic success, laying its eggs. I don't know. There are spiders that do this, so there must be some evolutionary advantage. I don't think it happens and then the spiders will die out, because what are the chances of that happening? Or
Well,
it's unusual.
evolution
but-
doesn't dismiss the possibility that all species could be doing things differently than they are now that would actually be better for them. It just explains that what we are doing so far hasn't killed us, hasn't made us all die out. But that doesn't preclude the possibility that we could be doing better for ourselves. So the spiders might not have died out by doing this. Evolution doesn't preclude the possibility that they could be not eating each other and they would actually be better off.
But it doesn't preclude the possibility that actually that is the ideal way of surviving. Maybe the ideal way of surviving is for the children to kill the parents. Let's just say food was in abundance and you didn't need the parents to take care of children. We're talking animals, we're talking any alien society, whatever it is.
Okay.
Then in that case, maybe that's the best way. Now you don't have any parents. You have more resources to go around. Boom. That is, let's say, the best way of surviving. And they take over their planet or whatever. And then they would develop this system where the parents, they say, oh, I'm ready. Let's go. I'm ready to go. And then their children say, yes, this is an honor. Thank you for letting me do this. And then boom. Now,
wait, I'm ready to go where?
I'm ready for you to kill me. Because
the parents view it as an honor.
Well, that would wind up happening inevitably.
You think so? It sounds like inevitably nobody would have kids after the first generation of children killed all their parents. Those kids would then not become parents if they then thought that their children were going to kill them.
Right. In this case, their brains developed in a way to want this because it's genetically favorable. It's a foreign concept to us because we think of survival as us, or my own survival, not as the community, as the society. So what that means is that it's not, you have to think past that. You have to, maybe there's a world where, if you have more resources, then the parents don't have to die. But I'm just saying it's theoretically possible to imagine a society like that, and morality would look completely different. But even in that case, there's eventually the parents might want, that to happen to them. I'll give a more a more relatable example.
Okay.
Aztecs slaughtering children, sacrificing them because the gods demand it. And really any society that's based off of some divine given morality. Because if it's divine given, then it's not about empathy at that point. It's not about enforcement. It's just, this is the objective truth. This is what you have to do. Don't think about it. This is, eternal. You'll get eternal reward. This is what's best for you. And then that becomes the morality. And then how you feel about it doesn't matter.
I can give you strong examples of societies who were brutally evil and specifically believed in no divine reality. They believed that there is no God and that we create the morality. And
they thought also that they were doing the right thing.
Yeah, definitely.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And there's a strong argument for Hitler. I know that some people argue that Hitler was motivated by Christianity, but I think that's a bit ridiculous. But easily Stalin, definitely.
Mm-hmm.
And also Mao. Cultural Revolution in China and the Soviet Union are both good examples.
Right. So it is, okay, fine. So it doesn't have to be necessarily divinely given. You're saying for it to have that issue of, if you start with certain assumptions, then you could justify things that to other societies seem immoral.
I think, sorry, can you repeat that last sentence?
Well, so it's a little confusing. I'm probably, bringing in a lot of different ideas here. I'm trying to like nail it down, but I'm trying to go back to this objective morality versus moral relativism, and I'm showing a difference between like why in general we think people are moral because of survival and empathy, and that's why it's not right to kill each other. But there are other societies where, based off of different values, whether it's divine given or some other fundamental rule within society, where people can justify killing others for the greater good. And you, who have your objective morality or something, how do you know? How do you prove to them that what they're doing is not good?
So first of all, a thing can be objective and it can still be unprovable. I don't need to prove it in order for it to be objective. That's number one.
Then how do you know that it's true?
That it's true. Well, there's a difference between knowing that something is true and knowing that there is a truth to be found. You can know that
there are more wheels than doors, or doors than wheels.
Right. I can know that one of those answers is correct even if I don't know which one.
Right.
For example.
But if you don't know it, then what's the point? You could believe in objective morality, but if it's inaccessible, then who cares?
Well, part of the point is precisely because of you asking what's the point. Because by accepting that morality is objective, it inspires a search for it. Whereas if you resign yourself to it being subjective, it closes one's mind away from moral pursuit.
Sorry, but I'm gonna have to say it's a bit weak. I think.
Okay.
I think so.
Well, okay, you just asked what the point was, but
no, but okay, thank you. I think that even if it's subjective, it's a very important thing that we have to search for. We have to search for the fundamental axioms. We have to refine it. We have to have a court system and thousands of law books that help us search for this, and political debates and all sorts of debates, philosophical debates, trying to find what it is, because for the good of humanity, not just because it's there, but because it's an essential quest for survival.
So I think you're speaking, I think, very much as if there's an objective morality here, which is why, frankly, no one is a true relativist when it comes to it. But
not that it's. I don't think that. I mean, whatever will work best for us.
But you're placing the value of human prosperity as the fundamental value that must be fought for, that we have to
and happiness
that we have to work hard and think and reflect and study and search for the proper tools and the proper answers that allow humans to flourish and prosper and be happy.
Yeah, it's like, I don't know,
the
culinary arts. Is there an objective best
Hold on. What if
dish?
I say,
it doesn't matter.
What if I say, okay, I'm with you. I want to search. I want to explore. I want to work with you hard to make sure that we all, let's say, I won't say to the opposite. I'll just say to make sure that we all remain at a solid 5.5 in terms of our human prosperity, human flourishing. You would say my opinion on that is equally valid to yours. When you have a real value you have a real value that is setting your sights on, what you're kind of putting morality into this separate thing as like something you find as a means to achieve human prosperity. But I'm suggesting that your objective of human prosperity is part of morality. And so if we adopt your worldview here for a second, if I were to say that, yeah, I want to work hard so that we just maybe flounder and just kind of stay at okay, we'll have lots of poor people and tons of drug abuse and a mental health crisis, but most people will be fine. That's what we should strive for. My opinion on that is equally valid because it's subjective anyway.
It's not a matter of it being subjective. That doesn't mean that being lazy about it is just as valid. It's a search to always strive to do better, not arrive at the actual truth. If if for some reason finding out the number of doors or wheels is very important, then yeah, I mean, you could have, like, we'll never know the answer, because even if it even if there is an answer, then no one will know when we've arrived at it. And we just always have to be striving to get there, build better models, build better estimations, think about it, and put in effort, not because we know, oh, we're 99% of the way there. Oh, now we're 99.9. Like, when are we going to stop? It's just a matter of striving to improve, even if it doesn't.
You're asserting objective morality while arguing for subjective
I
morality.
don't think I am.
Because one, you're asserting that subjective morality, number one, is objectively better than, meaning it sounds like it's an argument from putting aside for a second what is, and saying that if you think of morality as being subjective, in the sense that we constantly have to strive for it and reflect on it and search for it, because it's not something that is just there and then you find it, then that allows us to live in a better world and become better people. But once you get to that point, because that allows us to live in a better world and become better people, that assumes you're straw manning, I think, the concept of objective morality, as if like objective morality is like, this is the way it is, and once we're there, we can stop. Well, obviously that's not moral, because like once you stop, you're not becoming better, and you're not. So obviously there's tons of good things that you could be doing better, and possibly you'll start doing bad things, because I think it is true that there's no such thing as just standing still. I think you're always going forward or moving backward. But anyway, you're kind of setting up this weak form of objective morality so that you can say, no, it's better to always strive. But I could frame exactly what you're saying in a very objective sense, which is just saying it is objectively better to not think that you have reached the highest form of morality that you are able to reach, to not be so arrogant about yourself to think that, but to always retain humility. I'm making a lot of objective statements right now. Humility is better than arrogance, and also that there is that striving and searching will always lead to a better result than standing still, something like that. I don't know. The point is that what undergirds these statements is an acceptance of an objective foundation of morality.
Mm-hmm. I don't know. I still maybe I'm a little lost in the sauce here, but I still think that the objective. Maybe this is straw manning what you're saying, but to me it sounds like objective morality is this thing that's out there, that's higher than we could ever hope to reach. We could only come closer and closer to it. But it's there. And I'm saying it doesn't matter whether it exists or not. It's just something that we can keep doing better and better at. And you're saying, oh, if you could keep doing better and better at it, that means that it exists somewhere out there. No, it's just an infinite kind of thing that doesn't exist at any specific place.
But see,
it's like, I don't know, being the best at basketball. Is that like, or the best at art? It's just an art. It's something that you could always improve on, but there's nothing that you could say, oh, we've done it. We've reached the summit. There's nowhere to go from here.
But you're confusing the summit for the very existence of the mountain itself.
Very nice.
Meaning,
you win just because of the quote.
Thank you. Meaning,
so you're saying objective morality means that there's a mountain, a slope?
Yeah.
So it's a never-ending slope. So you're saying it's a thing that you could, because you could compare one morality to another.
Yeah.
Then, okay.
By the way.
But, okay, so then I would retract a bit more and then say it's about settling on, you could always do worse. That's fine.
Okay.
That doesn't mean objective.
That's a big thing, to really accept that there is a worse. We both agree on that.
Not really, because it's about finding these axioms that are necessary for survival and empathy. And if you're not, like, it's about being able to satisfy those goals. And if you don't satisfy those goals as well, then it's not it's not as good.
Right. Meaning the goals is what really
But
matters.
you set those goals up yourself. We've set these goals up on our own as people, as humans, but they're argued all the time. They're all subjective what these goals are.
So yes, I prepared for this moment. So there's, I think I'm very glad, because I think we got to a good place where we accept that morality can be thought of in terms of goals, and the way to get to those goals is objective. There are things that would objectively take us further from those goals, and there are things that we could do that would objectively take us closer to those goals. And if we set up our goals as something that something like survival, human prosperity, happiness, that sort of thing, there are things that will objectively take us away from that, and things that will objectively take us to that, and there are things that might objectively take us no closer or further from it. So that's so far is good.
Sort of. If you're sacrificing children for eternal reward because God told you, and you think that will take us closer to your goal, and by not sacrificing children, that'll take you away from your goal, then I think we both still agree that that's, there's something wrong with the goals themselves.
Nice. Absolutely. Thank you. Yes.
But other people wouldn't,
Well, I think that's the crux of the conversation. Are there goals that are objectively better than? Can we objectively talk about the goals and not just the ways to get there?
I think we can do well and estimate certain goals. I think that's the whole issue. The whole issue of humanity in a nutshell is disagreement about the goals and how to arrive there. So you'll have people say, okay, the goal is human prosperity, and then you'll say, oh, okay, well, for us to flourish, we have to get rid of these people, okay, because they are not helping people flourish. We view them as being against what we're trying to do. They're trying to attack us. We have to attack them for our benefit. Whereas if you ask the people on the other side, they'll say, what do you mean? It's those guys that are that have to be gotten rid of. And then, you have all sorts of issues that arrive because of how people subjectively see the situation from their point of view, even if their goals are consistent. They could logically deduce, something that justifies a terrible thing.
Yeah. So I think that there is a hierarchy of goals. There are some goals that are better than others, and striving for those goals, if it is a high goal, a good goal, that is a moral thing to do. But morality also consists of constraints, and there are constraints that are kind of like independent of any goals. Although I think the goals are also independent of anyone's. Meaning there's an objective hierarchy of goals. Like there are some goals that are better than others, and there's a goal that is the best goal. And striving for that goal is the best path to be on. But even amidst all of that, there are moral constraints that, at least for right now, I'm thinking of as being separate from goals. I don't know if you necessarily have to think of them as being separate from goals. But so someone who has a goal, but the means to achieve that goal goes against the constraints, they're not being moral.
So yeah, I sort of thought of it as like not constraints, but principles.
Okay.
So this is like the classic trolley problem. So if you do the ends justify the means?
Yeah.
Can you torture someone? Or is that in principle bad, even if it's to the benefit of others? The classic trolley problem is if you have a trolley that's coming down the rail track, like a train. Train's coming down the rail. There are 4 people on the side that are about to be hit, and 3 people on the other track. And you could divert the train so that it hits 3 people instead of 4. It's going to hit one or the other. Okay, so like you can't stop the train.
Can we make it 4 and 1?
4 and 1, sure. Yeah, just to drive the point home would be, yeah. So what would you do in that case?
I think I wouldn't divert the track. I would let the trolley hit the 4 people. But it depends on the situation. But yeah, go ahead. Sorry.
Right. So there's the utilitarianist approach, which is maximize. I have this like objective function I'm trying to maximize. I'm trying to optimize the amount of happiness and minimize the amount of human suffering in the world.
Yeah.
So I'll let one person die as opposed to four. And that will, yeah, that'll maximize more happiness. Someone's gonna have to die. So why not, kill this one guy and save the lives of three or four, I guess, yeah.
Yeah.
So, but then you could take that even further and say, okay, are you going to divert a track that's about to kill 1 million people to save 999,000? And then, like, you're going to have to live with that. Or the reverse of it.
The reverse, yeah.
Yeah. And then there's so the principle is, maybe that you're acting on is don't intervene, whatever will happen, will happen. And you probably have your own reasons for that, right? You said that you would.
I said I would not divert it, but I thought about this a bit, and I think it really depends.
Even after you asked me to change it to 4 and 1, you said don't divert it.
Yeah, because it makes it a tougher question.
Okay.
4 and 1.
I thought you were okay. Nice.
It really depends on the details of the scenario. I think I'll try to explain. For example, if it's the case that the train it's a terrible accident, it's just a runaway train, it's out of control for whatever reason, and these people on the tracks just happen to be there. It's very happenstance. Maybe they're like having a picnic on the tracks, but why are they on the tracks? Who knows? I don't know. It's very just like natural and organic and happenstance. Then I'd probably divert the train. And let me explain the second case, and then because you might be wondering why this matters. But if it's like this scenario set up by some evil mastermind, where like some evil mastermind like tied one person to one track, and then tied 4 people to the other track, and then set the train, and then put me in front of the trigger, the lever, and then said like choose. Then I don't negotiate with terrorists. I don't do what he wants me to do. I don't buy into the system. I don't buy into his whole setup. I don't intervene. I don't switch the train.
Okay, so let's assume there's no mastermind. You just woke up unconscious. Okay, no, even that's not good enough. I don't know. Okay, fine. Let's say it naturally arose.
If it fully naturally arose,
and you see there's a school bus and
then
a car.
I would probably do what would kill fewer people.
Mm-hmm.
Because I've had there are 2, I think, very significant directions that one can go in, no matter what answer one gives to the Trolley problem. So if somebody says, I'm not going to intervene, then a good scenario to change it is to say, what if you're the pilot of a plane? It's going down. You're on track to hit like a very populated area, or you could turn the plane to hit a more sparsely populated area, a more rural area, but like you're not going to avoid people entirely. Like there's going to be somebody who's hit in the crash. Mm-hmm. Are you actually not going to turn away from the populated area because you're like, well, I'm already on this course, so I might as well stay? You weren't somebody who said, I'm not going to intervene, so of course you're going to say you changed. Right. But so even if you say to the Trolley problem that I am going to intervene and kill 1 person to save 4 or to save 5, whatever, then a good scenario to give to that person who says that is, okay, what if you are a doctor in a hospital? There are 5 patients. Each one is sick and needs a vital organ transplant. There's somebody who's just walking by on the street, passing the hospital at this moment. And let's say it's a futuristic society where you have some device that tells you that he has the perfect organs for all 5 of these people. You could just harvest all 5 vital organs from this person and save 5 people in the hospital. Do you do it?
Right. So that would be the hard thing to answer. And I wouldn't. And I'd like to say my principles that are guiding me on this is that, yeah, if you're going out of your way to kill someone that is completely uninvolved, then you shouldn't. But I might behave differently if it's to save, like my own children. Mm. So I don't know. It's a difficult question. And in your case, where even if there's like a mastermind setting it up, and you could save, and the train's heading towards like 1 million people versus just one person.
Well, so
And
the reason why,
and he's, he's kind of doesn't have, I don't know, he smells funny, and I don't know, I don't know. I'm just saying maybe he's not, you have kids or something on the other one, so you could save millions of kids or something. Like I'm just trying to push the case as
Yeah.
extreme as possible until you finally intervene.
so if it's an evil mastermind who set it up, and the train is on its way to kill like 1 million,
A million
some
people.
outrageous number, 1 million kids, or one guy.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I think I intervene. I switch it, even though
That's breathing sort of a sigh, sigh of relief.
I switch it, even though the kids are already kind of at the mercy of this evil mastermind, right? If he's setting this up, like the kids are already, like he could kill the kids right now. But I switch it in the hopes that I buy a little more time for the kids and they get saved. Now why don't I do that for the 4 people? Well, because with the 4 people, I view the 4 people and the one person as just one group of 5. Everybody's at the mercy of the mastermind at this point. We're all in this terrible situation together, and so now I should still try to buy time for the 4 people, but maybe I'm being inconsistent. It feels like it's more okay to not intervene when there's a small number of people, because I can just say like, hold on, wait a second. No, fine. It's tough.
Okay.
It's definitely tough.
Yeah. I mean, usually the distinction I think that people make, like if you have to throw someone on the train that wasn't tied up at all and was never at the mercy,
Yeah,
then you shouldn't do that.
because somebody who wasn't involved in the situation at all, and then to just like bring them in, it's a complete innocent bystander, seems very unjust.
Mhm.
It's like the guy walking by the hospital who happens to have 5 violence.
Right. And so I'll tell you why I've been thinking about this a lot. Not just because of our goals stuff. And we don't have to get too much into it, but I think a lot of it comes down to, at the end of the day, like how innocent is the bystander? How many people are we talking? What type of scale are we talking? Like if I think there are, cases that are much clearer, in the case of, let's say, the Holocaust, right? You had like they put so much effort into killing so many people for no actual gain. There was no self-defense. It was just, they had their goals that they were trying to achieve, but it didn't even make any sense in terms of like making anything better for the German people or whatever. And it was just the sheer scale and the sheer innocence of the people involved. And then you have other conflicts, which you could tell me if you don't want to get so into it, but they start off where people are killed or taken, and to save their lives, you go to war to save those people's lives.
Like October 7th.
Yeah, sure. There are plenty of other instances, but a lot of wars are started like this. I'm specifically more thinking about that war, the Gazan War.
Mm-hmm.
But a lot of wars, start with some catalyst of, hey, they attacked us. Now, in self-defense, we retaliate, and ultimately, this will lead to a larger amount of people dying. But there's the principle of, hey, we can't just let our people die. And so it starts like this, like in self-defense, if they killed us, save our people, so we're gonna now we're gonna go to war, and bystanders will likely be affected. And to someone who's a complete outsider to the situation, they're like the person in the trolley problem, where they say, hey, I could, the people on the track are equivalently valuable in their mind. They don't see a difference. They say, hey, I could save more people by ending the war and letting fewer people die, the original people who were taken or something, and or let a situation of basically letting terrorists win because it'll help the ultimate utilitarian goal of minimizing deaths overall, possibly.
Are we accepting for the sake of discussion that
if we
will?
accept that, yeah,
Okay.
that like let's say you have a small group of terrorists who just kidnap people every year, but taking them out will kill a lot more people. So
Okay, but you have to consider how many other terrorists might this inspire to mimic behavior if we don't
sure,
retaliate.
but let's say we have a simulation where this is just these are the givens.
Okay.
So then then you start wondering at some point, like, okay, what number of people are we willing to sacrifice for this? I don't know, if you want to look at the Russian-Ukraine war. If, I think most people can see Russia as, the one who's, for some reason, insisting on continuing this war, and Ukraine is the one in self-defense.
Yeah.
But at some point, if Ukraine pushes Russia to nuke everyone, to nuke them, and then start a nuclear war, and then we all die, maybe there's an argument for saying, hey, we should just let Ukraine be taken over. Even though in principle it's wrong, it'll save the most amount of people overall. So harvesting someone's organs, it'll save the most people overall, even though in principle it's wrong. And I think a lot of the moral discussions that take place today can be reduced to this question.
The question of
principle versus utilitarianism.
Interesting. Well, I think I disagree with principle for the sake of principle when it comes to moral choices. I think that the principles that we have are there for a reason, and there's really a utilitarian long-term reason for those principles, which we kind of touched on while we were dissecting the issue of, going to war to save a few. Well, if I always allow my people to be murdered or to be kidnapped, then all of my people will eventually be murdered and kidnapped. And then if I allow all of my people to be murdered and kidnapped, somebody else will then, another nation will start getting murdered and kidnapped because the villains who did this are even more emboldened as they murdered and kidnapped all my people. So
it's not just a matter of scale of the number of people to die, but also how far into the future we're willing to look.
Yeah, definitely. You have to look at least some amount of time into the future, I think.
But subjective how far you want to go. But number, okay.
I suppose, yeah. I guess there comes a time at some point in the future where it just becomes so foggy. If you can't properly make decisions based on this nebulous point at some point in the future that we have no way of knowing what will be. But we can reason more about what will be in the immediate future. And especially when there is a kind of clear logic to the cause and effect, we can, whether it happens in the next few days or in the next few weeks or in the next few years, that kind of cause and effect relationship will play out at some point, which is that if good nations don't defend themselves, then bad nations will just be more emboldened and do more bad things.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think we could both agree there. Do you think that one side is ultimately right versus the other? Or do you think it's
like one side is always right and one side is always wrong? Definitely. Like whenever there's a war in the world, you're saying?
Yeah, a conflict, a moral question, a moral debate.
So, well, I definitely don't think right and wrong is a binary. You could rephrase the question as, is one side always better?
Okay.
And I think there are many cases where we can say one side is better. I don't know if not in every case one side is better. If you have two nations who both, engage in child sacrifice, are fine with raping their slave women or something, two very immoral nations, and they go to war over a territorial dispute, neither side is better than the other.
Mm-hmm. Okay. And if you're faced with a moral dilemma, then also can it be neither side is the trolley problem, or who should you help, just as a policy? Like if you have the decision to help one person versus the other, or if you're debating, I don't know, shooting someone trespassing on your yard. Is there an answer to that? Or are we just like doomed to debate this question forever?
There
Shooting trespassers, for example.
there is an answer. Yeah,
There's an answer?
there's an answer.
Really?
There is a most optimal decision that you should make in every scenario.
Really?
Yes, I'm waiting for the trap. Yes.
Okay. How do you decide? I mean, I would say we have to have some policy. The courts have to decide. But I think, law is always going to be this dynamic thing that's changing morality. It's going to be this thing that changes. And yeah, obviously it depends on the situation, but the judge at the end of the day has to come to some decision in every case and rule one way or another.
Yeah.
But he'll screw up. He'll make
Yeah, I
a
accept
mistake. And but so what does it mean that there's like an optimal way that like you could quantify?
Because there's a if we were to obtain all of the facts of the situation, we would be able to reason about what the best decision would have been. If the trespasser is just some person who got a little lost, and also that he was going to give me like a new car for letting me go through his territory, like I don't know, something ridiculous, but I shot him. If I were to know that he was innocent and he meant no harm, and also that he was going to give me a new car, then obviously my decision to shoot him was wrong in the sense that it missed the mark given the objective facts. It wasn't necessarily wrong in the sense given what I knew at the time I made an immoral decision, not necessarily. But that wasn't what I was saying before. What I was saying before was that there's always an optimal choice. You might not necessarily know it, but if you were to know all the facts, the optimal choice often becomes apparent.
What's the movie where basically they stop people from committing crimes before they've committed them?
Minority Report.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
the point of that movie, by the way, was that has some serious moral problems with it.
Yeah, but I think it's exactly what you're talking about. Mm-hmm. That even if you knew all of the variables of the situation, there's still something like if you're shooting a trespasser and you're saying like, how could you possibly know that he had in mind to kill you?
Oh well,
because if you did know that, then you can't say he was going to kill you until he's actually done that. And since you have no way of doing that because you've shot him, then you'll never know. And so therefore he hasn't done it. It's like in Minority Report. You know they're going to commit the crime, but that doesn't make it right to arrest them until after they've committed the crime.
Well, it is interesting. I haven't seen Minority Report in a very long time. And initially when you brought it up, I was thinking, like, yeah, there are some serious moral problems with killing somebody before they've committed a crime. But then I thought a little further and I realized that, well, in Jewish law, there's a concept of a rodef, someone who is chasing somebody else. That is to say, someone who is attacking somebody else, going to murder somebody else. And that you are not only permitted, but encouraged, obligated, I don't know, to defend the innocent person and, if need be, kill the person who is trying to murder somebody else.
Assuming, he's chasing him with a knife and all, but maybe he wants to cut his salad.
Well,
so you can never know 100% until the knife has.
Yeah, but you can't know 100%, but you can be in a state. You can be in a state of reasonable confidence that no one can blame you for acting on that. Right. On the evidence in front of you.
So is that, well, no one can, I mean, there's always that, most people can't blame you. And
yeah. Okay.
Is it optimal? I mean, the optimal thing was to kill him, but in self-defense, but you never know. So it's just, I don't know.
Well,
maybe you could still say it's optimal, given what you knew in the situation.
Yeah.
Even though your knowledge was incomplete.
And also, if we had a device that would then tell us after the fact whether he was actually going, and I know what you're going to say, you're going to bring up Minority Report, but I'll explain in a second. If the device were to tell us, okay, this person, let's play it out. if you had not intervened, play it out. What happens? He goes and kills him. Okay, so you made the right decision. You killed the person he was going to kill. Alternatively, play it out, and he says like, "Hey, I'm here for
dropped your knife.
I'm here for you dropped your knife, or I'm here for the party. I'm here to cut up the fruit." Then you made the wrong decision. Like, again, just because it's impossible to know in the moment doesn't mean that there isn't an answer, or that the question isn't objective. To go back to that, and that is to say that if a device told us, we would know.
But no such device exists, and it's impossible for such a device to exist.
But it's I can make a comparison between morality and science. Morality is just as objective as science. How do you know? Science has changed. Like, science hasn't changed, obviously, but our understanding of science has changed over the generations, over the years. How do we really know that we're right about string theory or quantum mechanics? Well, there's a lot of...
You can test it at any time.
How do we know that our tests are sufficient to conclude what we're trying to conclude? How do we know that we've excluded all possible variables and all possible... how do we know that our testing devices are accurate and that we're not being fooled by our own devices or by our own eyes or something like that? Yeah, that sort of thing.
I see. Okay. Okay. So let's talk altruism.
Wait, we're not going to then talk about the Minority Report?
I thought we did.
But I thought you were going to bring up a challenge to you, and I said that if you had a device that tells you what would have played out if you hadn't killed him, then you know whether you made the right decision. But then you could argue, hey, but what about the Minority Report, where they know that he was going to murder his wife, so that they jumped in and arrested him or killed him? Who knows?
I don't know. It depends on the day. Sometimes I feel like, yeah, obviously, if you know he's going to kill his wife, then you should step in and arrest him. On other days, I'm like, hey, what the heck? He didn't do anything, so don't. So, which is the whole point of the movie, because there is no answer to the question, and also we have no such machine, and it's impossible for such a machine to be built. So
but I think there's an important piece as well, which is that he has to have already he has to already be doing something wrong in order for you to be able to intervene at all. I guess if I truly had a device, how do I know? The thing is, you never know the device is accurate. Like, that's kind of the point of the Minority Report, is that if I remember correctly, that the device was not entirely foolproof at the end. That there was a case where he wasn't going to do it. Like, he was thinking of doing it, but he wasn't going to do it.
Yeah, I mean, we could think about this. If someone writes a whole manifesto about how much he hates some minority,
Minority Report,
and he writes a report on it, and they've reported him, can they lock him up because he's a danger? I mean, that's a very practical thing. There is no machine that'll tell you 100%. You just have to make a decision, and there's no optimal. I don't know how you could say you made the best decision. I mean, how could you say you made the best decision given the information you have if your information isn't complete? I don't know.
Well, I think you can say that as well. Meaning, if we accept that the information is incomplete, what do I know right now? I think we can reason about what the best decision is.
It's like, I don't know. So let's say your information is that I give you is he writes left-handed, and statistically, murders are more like there's a higher percentage of murderers who are left-handed than who are right-handed. I don't know.
Well, first of all, preponderance of the evidence or preponderance of probability is not sufficient to lock somebody up.
But that's what it all is at the end of the day.
No. Beyond a reasonable doubt is not the same as preponderance of the evidence.
Not how, it's the label that's assigned to it.
You think?
But there is no such thing as beyond a reasonable doubt. It's beyond, okay, fine. There's beyond a reasonable doubt. And then there's, it's still a probability thing. I don't know. It's just...
Well...
Yeah, beyond a reasonable doubt isn't as great as maybe you think it is. I don't know. You get what I'm driving.
I think maybe. Even if I accept that we can, let's say, reduce the concept of beyond a reasonable doubt to a probability, which actually I've seen. I was have you ever had jury? They don't have jury duty in Canada.
Yeah, we don't have a court system. People just stab each other. Of course, we have jury duty.
Well, Israel doesn't have juries.
What?
Israel doesn't have juries.
How are people decided? There's no jury of your peers?
No.
Does England? Because I know Israel's founded on the English court system.
I'm I'm pretty sure Israel doesn't have juries. Israel has a judge panel, like a panel of judges that decide criminal cases. I think it's at least 3.
We need some judicial reform here.
Anyway,
that must mean, I don't know, we have to check that if in England it's the same way, because it's inherited from the English system.
I'd be curious. I mean, even though Israel took a lot of inspiration from England, I'm sure Israel didn't take everything. It's not necessarily the case that Israel took everything.
Not inspiration, but like the court system was continued by what existed during the British mandate.
Oh, interesting. Okay. I guess that makes sense, because it's hard to uproot everything at once. / maybe we don't want to.
Mm-hmm. But I hear why you'd want a judge who actually has a lot of experience dealing with these matters, deciding things, rather than some Joe off the street. On the other hand, I see why you'd want some random Joe than some judge who just has this much power.
Right.
And is never subject
out of touch
to
academic judge.
Yeah.
Doesn't understand the common man. Just
okay. I see where you fall on it. Then.
No, I see both sides. Okay. I'm just arguing for one side at the moment. So anyway, the point was that even if we could reduce beyond reasonable doubt to a probability, it wouldn't be 51%. 51% is preponderance of the evidence. Beyond reasonable doubt, it's
like 95%.
It's interesting. I was actually I was on jury duty. I didn't get to be on a jury, but I was in the courtroom when they were like selecting jurors.
You failed.
Sorry?
Did you fail to be selected?
I was not selected. I wouldn't phrase that. I failed to be selected.
But it's not like they ask you questions.
No, I never got a question.
Okay, good.
I was put in the box for a moment, but then they took their group. Anyway, I heard one of the lawyers asking one of the potential jurors what percentage he thinks beyond a reasonable doubt means. And I believe the juror would interpret it as like being very, very high, like over 99%. And the lawyer was trying to use this as grounds to not select him, because he was saying that no, beyond like 99.99%, that's not what it means. Like,
that's too unrealistic.
Too high.
Too unreasonable.
Yeah. It's when you put a probability on it, it starts to get weird, because like I'm gonna lock somebody up for life even though there's a 5% chance he's innocent.
Right. There's no objective way of quantifying it. It's all subjective. Morality is all subjective. I get you.
What was I saying though? Oh yeah, that they're not the same. That's all I was saying. That beyond a reasonable doubt is not the same as preponderance of the evidence. And why were we talking about that?
Why were we talking about that? That's an excellent question. We were talking about subjectivity. Do you ever know for sure? We're talking about Minority Report. We're talking about will you ever know that someone chasing you is trying to kill you?
Right.
If you have all the evidence in a court of law, we were talking about the FBI, seeing your manifesto.
Right.
And whether that's sufficient to lock you up.
Yes.
And left-handed people.
Oh, there you go. Left-handed people. Yeah. Because the thing with left-handed people is, left-handed people are more likely to be murderers than right-handed people. That's just even if that's the case, that's just preponderance of the evidence.
And people that say that's have a mental health record, or that people that say, oh, I hate these minorities, that boosts the likelihood that they'll commit a crime against these people. You accumulate enough probabilistic evidence in your favor. Does he have to say, I am going to kill this person right now, here is the gun I'm going to use, I have shot him, that's it? No, it's never like that.
Right.
But it's all about hints, points. Oh, why would his DNA be at the scene? It's about building a case, a story that fits, that makes sense, with high probability.
I do want to mention, for the sake of justice and posterity, that I think we did just misuse probability a bit when it comes to, I think that this was misused in the courtroom. Let's even say that 99% of murderers are left-handed, right?
Right.
Does that mean that if I have a left-handed person, there's a 99% chance that he's a murderer?
Well, this is Bayes' rule. The Bayes' rule that you have to take into account the population of people that are actually left-handed.
Okay.
And And yeah, there's a whole
Yeah,
there's
very
a whole
good.
formula.
There's a whole formula. So even if 99% of murderers are left-handed, it could be that only 0.02% of left-handed people become murderers.
Because there's just
So
so
few,
many
so many people, and so
who are
few.
left-handed. And so, yeah.
Yeah, like the number of murderers relative to the entire population is pretty
Right.
small. Even if the vast majority of them are left-handed, the number of left-handed murderers compared to the number of left-handed people might also be very, very small.
Mm-hmm.
So I just wanted to clarify that for the sake of like I don't want people to listen to us and think like we support this ridiculous abuse of math in the courtroom, which I think is terrible.
God forbid. Sorry.
There have been really egregious cases of misuse of math in the courtroom, which definitely speaks to we were talking about the benefits of the jury system versus judges. It probably speaks to a disadvantage with the jury system because some jurors, I think, they hear an expert talk about math and they just go glossy-eyed and think like, oh well, that makes sense, when it could be just like an egregious abuse of math.
Mm-hmm.
Anyway,
so on the line of thought of policy and formula for imposing morality, I think one of the reasons it's becoming maybe more relevant outside of the court of law is we are now programming computers, providing them with more power and having to face certain moral questions. If you have a self-driving car,
yeah,
does it hit the 4 people or the 1 person?
yeah,
These are real decisions you have to make, or do you just let it, continue on its own? So the decision is going to have to be programmed in there. The probabilities are going to have to be calculated or trained in some way with some sort of statistical machine learning
yeah,
method. If you have, or if you're just creating software that provides answers like any GPT answers, you have to put rail guards on that, I guess. You don't have to, but you put into, whether you could deep fake someone nude, or whether to allow that possibility to happen, that to be accessible, or is it just going to happen anyways? So you have to think about like principles or utilitarian repercussions. There's something that I think last time we mentioned Arthur C. Clarke's rules of technology. So this week, this week we can mention Asimov's rules of
what
robotics.
What are Arthur C. Clarke's rules?
His was like any sufficient technology is indistinguishable from magic.
Oh.
And
Nice.
The other two, something about society will just keep improving until, I don't know, it's not sci-fi anymore.
Okay.
Or it's not magic. Yeah, I don't know, something, the other two. But Asimov, the other science fiction writer, has 3 rules of robotics. A robot may not injure a human being or through an action allow a human being to come to harm. A robot must obey the orders given it by human beings, except where such orders would conflict with the first law. And a robot must protect its own existence as long as such protection does not conflict with the first or second law. And like you said, it's from iRobot. And the whole movie is, exploring this, should robots, what do they do if they get conflicting orders to kill their, if you want a robot to put you out of your misery or something, euthanasia, I don't know, or to sacrifice itself, or, what are the laws of morality for non-human beings? I don't know, just things to consider. I don't know if you have any thoughts on that specifically.
I was thinking about the scene in the movie iRobot, which is very different from the book. I did read the book, but I don't remember it so well. Of course, the book is not, it's just a bunch of short stories. I don't remember them so well. But the movie, in spoilers for anyone who hasn't seen.
Will Smith comes up 2 times
in our
podcast tonight.
We just have to, one of us has to slap the other at this point.
Next, we're going to be discussing Bad Boys or Independence Day.
Yes, Men in Black.
Men in Black. Oh.
Yeah. Anyway, so
alien morality.
alien morality.
Yeah, maybe you could have brought that in. Okay, yeah, go on.
So Will Smith talks about being in a car that goes into a river, and there's a girl with him inside, and a robot jumps in to save them, and the robot saves him and not the girl. And he even told the robot to save the girl. He says, save the girl," and the robot saves him. And that's why the girl died sadly, and he's alive in the movie, obviously.
And that's why he doesn't trust robots.
Right.
And that's why, like a lot of, at least the movie, because I didn't read the book, it's all about like humans at the end of the day are the only ones who should decide morality.
Yeah, we shouldn't export it.
You're right.
To
machines. And I think a big reason for that I don't know if I see it so discussed, but humans are involved in the process itself. Humans are going to have to live with the repercussions. Your autonomous car is not going to go to jail for killing the fewer people. The robot doesn't care. It's not going to feel bad. It's not going to be traumatized forever that it let this child drown. But a human, when he makes that decision, he's like, at least if he makes the wrong decision, then it's at least constrained to humanity, and that we could like move forward as a society to do better, because he's going to push on the next iteration. Like we're going to see, oh, what happened to him. Through empathy, we're all going to try to strive to do better, to maybe reach this objective morality summit. Right?
But there is no summit. I accept that there is no summit.
You accept that there's no summit. It's just the climb.
It's the climb.
It's the climb.
But to say that there is no objective morality is to say that the mountain itself does this. Anyway, we already touched that. Sorry.
Yeah. Okay.
But wait, if you were done with that, I just wanted to say that was great. That was powerful. I never even really articulated that for myself. I like that.
Mm-hmm. I think it's I had a bit of a revelation about this when I was just thinking about the subject earlier this week, because I was thinking, no one really talks about the human in the story, like, and how important that is, and how human morality is at the end of the day. It's not like just to be programmed into something that's inanimate. It's so like intrinsically linked. Like we created it, and like you said, we shouldn't export it to other things to make our decisions for us. So like, even if which is a scary thing about the state of, warfare that's going to happen. We're living through Ender's Game right now. Boom, another sci-fi reference. Got to start reading more up on my sci-fi, because I think we're getting there. I don't know. They're all becoming more relevant. So you have drone factories, okay? That Ukraine is just, manufacturing thousands of drones, and everyone's they have these operators that are, flying these drones in, and then and taking out Russian soldiers, Russian equipment, and you have Russian drones that are also like, or missiles. And I guess missiles have been a thing for a while, but now like, a missile, you launch it and then you don't have continuous control. We still have had missiles, but when you launch it, you usually know where you're going, and then missiles have the same problem. But we're increasingly getting to a point where it's just like drones fighting each other. And which might be better, because eventually people will say, okay, what's the point of fighting if it's just technology? Although, no, then it just comes down to who has the better technology wins. I don't know.
Which one could argue
it's already the case. Yeah. I don't know. It just seems so. I guess it's nothing new, but you have people in drones or shooting missiles that are not actually on the ground making the decision, which is good, because we don't want, if it's good if it's your army doing that, because you don't want your soldiers to have to die for no reason, to take unnecessary risk if they could avoid it. But if you don't live with the repercussion, then there's something missing there.
It's probably easier to, right? We talk about how much more sensitive we are now to civilian casualties and the quote rules of war. It's probably easier to be loose with those when you're just behind a screen controlling drones
Mm-hmm.
than it is if you're actually on the battlefield and you have to say to yourself, "Oh, do I actually like fire this RPG into this house that has no doubt innocent people inside?"
It desensitizes you to the ultimate moral questions. Similar to if you have just one judge sitting all the time seeing people,
Yeah,
probably loses touch.
that's why they say the best indicator of whether you'll get off is whether
is at the beginning of the day or the end
or
of
right
the
after
day.
lunch, at the beginning of the day or right after lunch.
Right. So which is it's these two things in conflict. You could, it's a system that's subjective. It's determined by man, so it's going to be fallible. It's going to be based off of whether the judge is hungry or not. It's going to play a big part or a part. And then on the other side, you say, well, if you just remove humans entirely, then there's something wrong there. If you just have an algorithm that determines your innocence, we're on the way there. You just enter all the evidence into the all-knowing ChatGPT, LawGPT algorithm, passes it through a few convolutional neural networks for the images, comes out with a statistical probability based off of all the evidence that it's seen in the past that you fed it, where you've, I guess, determined cases in the past. You have to have some ground truth when you're training it. You feed it cases and the evidence there and what was the verdict. And then based off of that, the algorithm determines it. There's still going to be something wrong with that. What if he makes the wrong decision? He doesn't care.
Yeah.
It's an algorithm. If you have a judge, then he has the fear that this could come back to bite him. There are consequences. He has to live with sending an innocent man to jail. And if he does, then at least someone pays for it,
Right.
That's like a consoling thing, at least. If someone makes if a policeman makes a bad decision, I don't know. That's a whole thing in itself, because why would anyone want to enforce the law if the consequences were so bad and then no one would want to do it? Why would anyone so you have to give them some leeway, but obviously there's a limit, and they have to live with the consequences as well. So I don't know.
That's all. Yeah, that's also very profound what you're touching on there. There's something worse, it feels, when a machine totally separated, disconnected from humanity makes the wrong decision versus when a human makes the wrong decision. It's when a human makes the wrong decision, it's kind of we maybe tell ourselves that he tried to make the right decision, but he's fallible and he failed in some way. When a machine makes the wrong decision, it's we're being wronged in some deeper way. I actually saw a clip of a tennis match recently where
I saw that.
You saw that, yeah.
Where the machine made a mistake.
Yeah.
But the player saw it.
Yeah.
The umpire saw the review. The guy said, "Look at the mark on the floor."
The umpire refused to go and look at the mark.
Right.
Because he said the machine called it, and that's what he called it. And the guy's I can literally show you where the ball hit the asphalt or whatever, the court, and there's a mark, and it's clearly off the line. And the umpire refused to look at it.
Yeah, so for your viewers out there, there's a free, or listeners, there's a free $1 million movie script right there. LawGPT.
Yeah.
And then you have to send in, I don't know, Will Smith to destroy LawGPT.
It's got to be Will Smith.
It's got to be Will Smith.
Absolutely.
It's still going. All right. So maybe that's a good place to wrap things up, unless you want to maybe discuss eternal reward as maybe we could maybe that would be the next level, not just the future, the heavenly realm, where there is no reward in this world for being moral, but in the next world, could there be? And should things be based off of that if we don't know for sure? And can you just justify certain things that sound wrong just because of eternal reward? I don't know, things that don't affect someone maybe negatively, but are divinely, we have divine sources for them saying, no, don't do this. Some priest says we should do this.
No, the answer to that last part is definitely not.
So how do you know when to not follow the priest? If given Pascal's wager of eternal damnation if you don't follow him, maybe a low likelihood, but such a
Well,
large consequence.
Pascal's wager has some serious issues, which I think you just hinted at, which is that you can use Pascal's wager equivalently to justify following Satan, if I'm using Satan
Sure.
as a. So Pascal's wager is not a great motivation to be religious.
Interesting. Yeah. I mean, or to do it like my one of my favorite Calvin and Hobbes scripts is where Calvin is being forced to eat his dinner, his chicken dinner, and he says, "What if we die and it turns out God's a giant chicken?" And his parents are just say, "Just eat your dinner, Calvin." And he says, "Eternal consequences. That's what." And I think about that a lot every time I eat chicken. No, I think about that as a way to kind of like dismiss eternal reward or damnation as a impetuous to be moral impetus. Yeah, I just went for it. I went for the big word. I used it wrong.
That's okay. You're close.
Sure? Wasn't that you who once said it's your pet peeve when people use big words incorrectly? This might be a long time ago. Maybe someone else, but okay. Yeah, impetus for morality as a basis.
I agree. I don't think it's a good. I don't think it's a good motivator. And when I really think about it, and I think we should think about it if we're interested in being moral, I'm not sure it's any better. Like, let's say I'm only good. There is a level to being only good for the sake of reward. At least you're being good at something.
Or for not being punished.
Sorry.
Or
so it's not being punished. Or it's not being punished. Yeah, exactly. But let's say in this world, I'm only being good because I don't want to go to jail, or because I don't know. I think it's good for my business. Like I'm just being good because like it's getting me more views on YouTube or something. It's making me money. And that's literally the only reason I'm doing it. Is that any worse than only being good because you think you're going to get reward in the next world? Like at the end of the day, you're only being good for a selfish reason, which again, like being good is still being good. Like it's a level. It's better than being bad. But that doesn't seem to be. You're not increasing the nobility in my eyes by removing the reward from this world and putting it in the next world. Like now you're being more religious, more pious, more noble by thinking about reward in the next world. But it's just in the next world versus in this world. Like why is that a more noble motivation?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I hear you. I mean, you could say, if you don't care as much about someone on a human enforcing the law because humans are fallible or something, mm-hmm. Whereas heavenly reward, that's the objective truth, mm-hmm. that is it at the end of the day. But
it's at least an ability to recognize what is truly good and perhaps even restrain yourself from pursuing what might be good in an earthly sense.
Right. But yeah, and that's forever. I don't know, maybe there's an advantage to that. Not that I hold with anything that of eternal reward or mm-hmm. damnation, just to play the devil's advocate.
Yeah. Well, so to respond to that, I was kind of assuming that you were kind of still just interested in getting some good, some pleasure to yourself, some benefit to yourself, but kind of just delaying it till after death as opposed to going for it now. Now, realistically, that's infeasible. If somebody's concept of good is limited to what is kind of beneficial to himself in a physical sense, in a this world sense, they will be inevitably drawn to the rewards of this world instead of being drawn to the rewards of the next world. So I think you are correct in that there is a higher nobility in recognizing what is truly good, or at least what is more good, recognizing that, the love of your children is a higher good than the tastiness of a burger, as an example. And so there is an ability in becoming someone who sees what is truly good as being better than what is more subjectively good because we enjoy it.
It's the climb.
It's the climb.
Okay. And last question, altruism. Does it exist? Can you do something good and moral without any personal benefit? So you were saying, like, is someone who does it because of earthly or human enforcement, it's no better than heavenly enforcement. But isn't everything, at the end of the day, isn't the impetus always reward and punishment?
Right.
Or, you would probably say we should strive to be moral people, not because of the reward, but because of the virtue of leading a virtuous life and being that person. But even that, because it's good to get into the habit once this is important to you, then you'll be more successful at it. We'll all be better as a society. But even that, at the end of the day, has the reward of personal satisfaction, being able to, even if no one sees you on an island, if you could get away with stealing something with no repercussions, you still don't do it because you want to lead a life of virtuosity, and that's what propels you. But there's still some reason why you wouldn't do it.
Right. So it's a mistake to think about it as in the way that Phoebe phrases it in Friends, or maybe it's Joey, show me a selfless good deed. And Phoebe tries to find someone who, just gave some money to some guy on the street and he's never gonna see him again. It was selfless. And then Joey says but what about the good feeling he got from it? And all this, Joey finds all sorts of ways to show that you got some benefit from it. But that's a mistake. Getting a benefit from it doesn't necessarily reduce the virtue of it. It's okay to feel good. Feeling good is not a vice. There was even towards the end of the episode, Phoebe, I think, did something nice and she thought it was selfless, and then later she said oh, that makes me so happy, and then she caught herself oh, I can't be made happy from it because then that makes it selfish. No, that's not true, even though it's funny.
Right, but it's not a vice, sure. But isn't it always necessary for anyone to be incentivized to do anything? I agree, maybe if this is where you're going, that it's a weird definition. It doesn't make any sense. There's no such thing, because you never do anything for any reason without a reason.
Yes.
And if you're doing something for no reason, then it's completely arbitrary.
Right. Then so you certainly haven't achieved any noble good by doing something for no reason at all.
Right. If you've done, if you gave money by accident without realizing it.
Right. That's definitely not better.
Right. You got no benefit, but you had no conscious knowledge that you were doing it. So It's just an impossible thing to arrive at.
Right. I agree with you. So at the same time, though, and I wasn't exactly prepared for this specific question, but to try to flesh it out as I go. At the same time, though, not all motivations are created equal. That is to say, you will have a reason to do it, and this reason will provide some benefit to you, but not all benefit to you is equivalent.
Mm-hmm.
There is higher order benefit to you, there's a more noble benefit to you, and there is less noble benefits to you. I could be doing something that seems good, but if I truly am doing it for the motivation that something very selfish, something kind of manipulative, or I'm only giving money to this person so that they'll speak well of me to the judge so I get off my murder case.
Or if you want to donate a lot of money so that your name could be on a plaque.
Yeah.
So that
which I don't necessarily think is something, I think probably most donors take a lot of satisfaction in having their names on plaques. I don't think that necessarily takes away from their donations. But if that's truly the entire motivation, but preferably something that actually would cause harm to someone later. You're doing something good now, but for a really selfish motivation, really selfish reason that will actually then be harmful to someone afterwards, that'll counterbalance the good you're doing, something like that. That's definitely on the edge of like, okay, that's clearly not a good motivation, to the point that maybe it even takes away from what you did. Um, and then you could have somebody who gets enjoyment from helping people, truly gets enjoyment from helping people. They don't need anything else. I love helping people. I love knowing that that person got the help they needed, and I love knowing that that person is now, sleeping better at night and having a full having food in their belly tonight. Um,
Do you think that person is born that way, or are they raised that way?
I think that it is certainly partly natural. Natural. Not everyone. Some people are just not built that way. Some people are more built that way. I definitely think it's also environment,
Nature and nurture.
but it's also what you choose to reinforce in yourself. Um, because I think that even people who are built that way will not be that way all the time, and they could come across times in their life where if they wanted to, they could say like, that's not really a value to me, and so I'm not going to cultivate that. Or they could say that is a value to me, and so I'm going to continue. Like, I do know that I have a natural ability to do that, but I also know that I need to cultivate it in order to retain it. I think that exists also.
Mm-hmm.
There's also a difference in the objective. If we zoom out, we can grade the action from a more objective perspective. Like if I'm friends with somebody and I do something nice for them, but I do it with an expectation that they're gonna, buy me lunch the next day. And then if they don't buy me lunch the next day, I'm gonna get upset inside. I'm gonna start bearing a grudge. I'm gonna get all moody, and then I'm gonna lash out at them later. And I'm gonna be like, I, bought you tickets to that basketball game, and you didn't do anything for me afterwards. Regardless of how it feels and how the motivation is, there's just something objectively worse about that. Like, did you really do anything nice if you're expecting something in return? If it came with this baggage, right?
Mm-hmm.
Meaning, is this person better off from you having bought them tickets to this basketball game if you then are then going to burden them with this baggage, this emotional baggage that comes along with it? Maybe this person's not really better off that way. Like, this person is happy without your tickets and without your emotional baggage. Whereas somebody who does something much more with an open heart, and maybe the only reward I needed was going to the basketball game with my friend, and like, I just, I'll treat you to the game, let's go, and I just had a lot of fun being with you. Like, no matter how happy they were from that action, there's just something so much more nice and wholesome about that. Like, and I think we know that when we look at it from an outsider's perspective.
It's more sustainable
It's more sustainable, yeah.
to be morally virtuous for the sake of morality itself, for the sake of virtue itself. It's, if you're always quantifying why, what does it mean, why am I doing it, then you lose something, you're saying. And it makes sense. It's we're dissecting a lot of it to try to understand more, but we both agree at the end of the day, it's about being moral because it's the right thing to do, because that's probably the healthiest way to go about it. You do what feels right, without looking for the reward exactly at the moment, and you let that guide you, and you let your principles guide you, and people, I guess, who are closest to you guide you. They probably have the largest influence on your moral choices throughout your life.
Yeah.
And it's a lot of it is personal. A lot of how you think about morality is just this thing that you grow up. It's like another sense in your body that you're always cultivating, refining. Like, what does this mean? What am I like? What is this thing moral? Should I be doing this and this? It's just like, is this food delicious? It changes. It's dynamic. It is subjective, but it's something very personal as well as societal, and it's like a journey. It's the climb. I think that's an overarching theme here, the climb that we're all striving towards and learning about ourselves and everyone else.
I can't think of a better way to end it. Poetry in motion. Oh man, there's one thing that I wanted to touch. There's one thing that I wanted to touch on,
Oh, man.
which didn't really come up, but I was hoping would come up. This is an epilogue already.
For the extra phonetic
Yeah,
listeners.
exactly. For our Patreon, our donors on
Exactly.
Patreon.
This is only available for our Patreon supporters.
Yeah.
Slash.
Exactly.
You'll know if you hear it.
So you mentioned art. You brought up art a few times as like being something that's obviously subjective, and like morality maybe is like art. I actually think art is more objective than we often say, but I think we often know that there's there is objectivity in art. There's also subjectivity. There's both for sure. It's a great merging of subjectivity and objectivity.
Probably you'll say like, and I think you've mentioned if you know when a song sounds bad.
Yeah.
What is when a song sounds good? That's more subjective.
Harder
right?
to define. But yeah, you know, like when something just okay, that's not even music. That's just a cacophony of sound.
Although there are famous songs that are just cacophonies of sound, like the Beatles' "Day in the Life." It just has a point that just sounds like a million instruments in an orchestra just playing out of tune, off key. But it like builds up into a crescendo where it eventually resolves itself.
Okay.
And people really like that.
There's still a structure to it. There's still it's still following some
right.
Some
sort of.
I was thinking about Harry Potter recently with the news about the new HBO series, and I was thinking about the first book because, of course, the first season is going to be the first book. And I was thinking, so the second to last chapter ends with Harry and Hermione doing the whole potion riddle logic test, and Hermione has to stay behind, and Harry has to go on to the place where the Mirror of Erised is, and the very last line of the second to last chapter says like he then went to the next room, and he saw a man standing in front of the mirror. It wasn't Snape. It wasn't even Voldemort. And then the chapter ends, and the very last chapter starts with saying it was Quirrell, and then there's the whole encounter between Harry and Quirrell. And I asked myself, what if the first Harry Potter book just didn't have the last chapter? It ended with Harry going into the next room and saying the man wasn't Snape, it wasn't Voldemort. End of book.
But what about the rest of the series?
Let's say the rest of the series doesn't exist either.
Okay.
It's just end of book right there.
End of series.
End of series.
Okay.
Is it a subjective opinion that would be worse? No, it would be objectively worse. And we like it's not just a matter of like everyone would agree, because you could say maybe there would be something. No, like there are reasons why it would be worse. There is reason like there's a good story needs a beginning, middle, and end. Things you set up, like the rule of Chekhov's gun. Chekhov's gun it's not a hard and fast objective rule, like, but if you're gonna break it, you need a reason. Like, you're familiar with Chekhov's gun?
No.
If the beginning of a story mentions a gun sitting on a mantelpiece, that gun has to be fired by the end of the story. Basically, anything you set up needs to have some payoff.
Mm-hmm. Well, I would say those are more structural necessities than reflections of the art itself. I think that if you have a house without a foundation, then it doesn't. Yeah, obviously that house is worse than another house, but like it's not even a house. It's not even a story.
So it sounds like you're avoiding the issue of objectivity in art by saying that things that don't follow the objective rules aren't even a story. It's not even a story. It's not a book. It doesn't have an ending.
It's not like there's the subjective parts that you discuss are all those are the cherry on top after the structure is established.
Oh, okay.
Just
fine.
Like so I can but agree. If you don't have, I mean, you could give another example. Maybe you could try of Harry Potter ending in a different, or having some other issue where it doesn't it doesn't compare to the series how it actually exists today.
Mm-hmm.
But so maybe you could do that. But I'm just saying, if you don't even have a book, obviously that's worse than.
But I could write a book that ends with just the second to
Right.
last chapter.
But you said every story has to have a beginning, a middle, and an end.
Yeah, but I could say that that's my ending. The ending is Harry going
Right.
off into the room. Don't you get it? It's like there's something deep about that.
Right. I hear your point. I hear your point. And I guess it's up to our viewers
Okay.
to decide. Right in the comment section below.
Yeah.
Should maybe Harry Potter would have been better like that. I don't know. Maybe some people really hate Harry Potter. I've met them.
They would have enjoyed it more.
They would have enjoyed it more if it was a single book because they hate reading so many books.
Not just that it was a single book.
And it ended right there.
It ended before you.
They like the mystery.
Who?
Some people like the mystery.
They like the mystery not being resolved. Okay. Cool.
But not us.
Not us at all.
We go all the way, hitting every single point that we wanted to.
Yes.
Everything.
I don't even
we
know
don't end right after the first section or even the second section.
No.
We go all the way because we're committed.
We are. Absolutely. Long form is
Long form.
Is the only form.
The whole story. You get the whole thing whether you like it or not.
Yeah. Honestly,
whether
I think
it's objectively good.
Yeah. Honestly, I think we kept it short.
Or just objectively bad. All right.
All right.
This has been the Benjy Cow Podcast.
Good night.
Good night, everyone.